Good morning. Well, it's morning for me. It's probably not morning for you, but I'm navigating this world of recording lectures just like you are navigating figuring out when to watch them, and I see I'm better in the morning than I am at night. I don't feel like I look like death warmed over. So we are starting chapter 4. You've had your first exam. I hope it went well for you. Got my fingers crossed. I'll see how it goes in a little bit. And we're starting a new chapter on tissues. So this is chapter 4, lecture 1. This chapter will probably have 4 recorded sessions. I'm thinking just because if we were face-to-face, I'd be jumping all around. And I'm not going to do that. So some sections are going to be really long and they just need to be their own recording. I'm totally stalling right now because tissues are very boring, but we gotta do it. So let's just embrace this wonderful chapter of tissues. I'm ready if you are. What? I guess you're ready then. All right, so let me make me tiny and let me get to the PowerPoint. I feel like I actually almost look like I know what I'm doing. I'm not gonna... I'm not going to go that far because we know I'm not that good. I haven't figured out editing yet. I'm not even ready for it. I don't even look at these after I record them. I just look ahead, as I'm sure you do too. Okay, so chapter 4, like I said, tissues are boring. They're just all this vocabulary, all these categories, but you know, in the level of organization, let's see if that's this next slide. Yeah, I'm going to go back to the other one. But in the level of organization, right, tissues have a major part. I get a group of cells with the same function, and I don't even care about this part, but they make a tissue. And then if I have different tissues with the same function, oops. Oh my goodness. We've put some with same function. Oh, I hate seeing my handwriting on this. That will be what? What's the next level? Organ. Yeah, man. Computer's making a lot of weird noises and I don't know why. It's not happy with me. So tissues, they're important, and that's why I embrace them. I lean into the pain because they're the foundation of organs and organ systems. So having said that, let's just go back to this. This is the purpose of this chapter. So we're going to talk about the different categories of tissues, and here are the different categories. We're going to talk about them again in a second. There's an epithelial category, connective tissue category, muscular tissue category, and then nervous tissue category. So we're going to talk about them. We're going to talk about different types of cell junctions and membranes and tissue repair. So don't blow off membranes and don't blow off tissue repair. That was very weird. Okay. So the types of tissues. 4 basic types, like I said. There's epithelial. Epithelial will cover body surfaces, lining body surfaces, lining cavities, forming glands. We will see that epithelial can either be one single layer of cells or can be many layers. Oops. Or, I forgot to write that in. And that's important. That's part of the big characteristic, a big trait of epithelial tissue. I'm going to skip connective for a second. Muscle tissue is movement, right? Muscle tissue is tissue that contracts and causes movement. Contraction usually means it gets shorter and then recoils, relaxes. So we will see there's 3 subcategories in where's my pen? In my muscle tissue. And then we have nervous tissue, and nervous tissue is like your neurons, your nerve cells detect and respond to changes inside the body and outside the body. All right, So we kind of have these three categories, and then there's connective tissue, and connective tissue is kind of where they dump the rest. Bird just buzzed by the window. So connective tissue does all these miscellaneous things, but they do actually have a couple things in common. Miscellaneous activities. They are different forms, different functions, and hopefully when we do them, that will make sense. That won't be in this lecture or even in the next lecture. It'll be in lecture number 3. All right, so epithelial tissue. Here we have epithelial tissue. Forms boundaries and then protection. Protection means it's going to be many layers of cells. Can't protect if you're only one layer. However, it also has these functions of secretion. That is because I have glands. But if I absorb and if I filter, that means that I'm one layer. So depending on how many layers in the epithelial tissue determines its function. All right. Connective tissue supports because I have bone, protects because I have bone, binds things together because there's tendons, there's cartilage, there's fat, adipose tissue for protection as well. I mean, it's just this whole wacky category, but it's actually kind of fun and it's growing on me like a fungus. Okay, so before we go into those 4 categories, we want to understand a little bit about how cells are well, kind of joined together or in contact with each other, because there's many different ways that cells have a relationship with the guy next door, their next door neighbor. Most of these cell junctions are in epithelial tissue. Well, you'll have a few in a nervous tissue and muscular tissue. None of these cell junctions. I guess you'll have some in connective tissue too. Oh, right. So there's 3 main ones. There's tight junctions, desmosomes, and gap junctions, but there's actually 5 types in the book. And I kind of ignored the other 2 types in the past, but we're going to look them over a little bit. But these, I think, are the main ones. Okay, so if we have tight junctions, I'm looking for the picture. Okay. So those other slides, feel free to check them out. I've loaded the PowerPoint as a separate file. So what you're seeing here is this is actually 2 cells together. Okay. Oops. So I have 2 neighboring cells sitting next to each other, and a tight junction has them totally zipped together. So when I say that, and I'm going slow, that means that nothing, I hate that this pen is so, right, that's supposed to be an arrow. And what I'm showing you is that nothing can pass between the cells. How nothing can pass between the cells. It will have to go through the cell to get to the other side. Go through the cell to go to the other side. So, no. Okay. That's the deal with tight junctions. So tight junctions are, just like they say, tight. So this is a total kind of zipper between. I know there's these little spaces. Don't worry about that. There's nothing can get between this. That's represented right in there. It has to go through the other side. This one is kind of interesting. This is adherent. So adherent is one of the 2 that I didn't really ever talk about before because I was just too lazy to learn about it. But now I have. So what you have are 2 cells. And you are seeing just the one wall. This wall here represents this wall. And there's these proteins, and the proteins kind of rivet them together, but it forms like a belt strapping them together. So they're kind of locked into place for when you have some, kind of some forces that want to stretch them apart, like when you're eating. Oh, where's my pen? Kind of resists forces that stretch apart. That was the word that. You can check it out in your e-text. Apart. That it should really be them, not it. So there's this. It's called an adhesion belt, kind of like strap the belt on so that your pants resist the force of falling down. I don't know. It's kind of funny. All right, I do like desmosomes. Oh, I guess I should take a little bit of time between them so you can actually read all those words. I'm just used to lecturing. Okay, so the desmosomes, again, it's talking about what's going on with two cells. And what desmosomes have are these proteins that are crossing between the cells and then actually across the cells. All right, so I kind of have these rivets, these spot welds, if you will. And in these fibers cross the cell to keep them all together, so rivets. Can stuff pass between them? Sure, stuff can pass between them. Between these cells. That's not their purpose. Their purpose with these like spot welds is to resist tearing. So this is where you will find a lot. You will find in tissues, like in your epidermis, right? I can try to rip off a chunk of skin. It's not happening. I mean, I guess if I had tried hard enough, it would, but that's because of these desmosomes, these rivets that hold everything together. Okay, hold together. So that's their purpose. What's this? Linker protein, resist tearing. Well, I already told you why it'd be useful, so you can't come up to me and rip off a chunk of my face. Hemidesmosomes are just like desmosomes, but hemi means half, right? So this is between a cell and not another cell. It's connective tissue. It's called a basement membrane. Kind of below it because, well, we'll talk about basement membranes when we talk about membranes, but it's below an epithelial tissue. So it's typically epithelial cell, this guy, and it's holding it in place onto the connective tissue. That's a hemidesmosome. I don't have much else to say about that one. But I do like this little guy called a gap junction. So here is a gap junction. It's my two cells. I feel so much fresher when I'm lecturing you guys in the morning. And can stuff pass between them? Sure, stuff can move between them. That's not their purpose. Oh, that's supposed to be the word them. But what I have is these like straws. Okay, so there are these connexins, and those are like straws, right? Like a straw that you drink out of. And this allows the cells to swap their guts. So this would be like if it was me and my husband standing next to each other. We are connected to each other with a straw sticking in me, sticking in him. I get his guts, he gets my guts. It's kind of gross, right? But I can pass nutrients and ions between. And another thing that this is good for is coordinating cell activity. You're like, when would you ever need to do that? What? In cardiac muscle. Cardiac is in your heart, right? So in cardiac muscle, you will find gap junctions so that each cell doesn't contract on its own and your heart's like, what's going on? But they're in uniform activity. Like the board in Star Trek, if you're a Star Trek fan. But you guys are probably not even born when those shows were on, sad to say. I was a Next Generation fan and the functional syncytium, but it just allows all cells to kind of work in unison. This is also found in a lot of nervous cells, well, some nerve cell connections as well. Okay, so that is my lecture, just introducing this topic and talking about cell junctions. Our first tissue, because I'm going in order, is epithelial tissue, and this is a very long lecture with a whole lot of things going on, I think. So I'm going to stop here and do it as a separate lecture. Alrighty, if I can. Okay, so I'll see you in a few.